We just read it from the scriptures, the story of the two travelers. They're making their way from Jerusalem to Emmaus. A journey of some 7 miles. These two people are walking along. There's nothing really exciting going on in their lives. They are walking into the evening sunset, both literally and figuratively, because they could probably not be much more downcast than what they were at this particular occasion. Just a week or so ago, they had gone to Jerusalem for the Passover. Now, the Passover doesn't have a lot of meaning for us. It was interesting that the news item that's been on the last couple of days about this latest shooting that took place down, not exactly sure, down in the southern states there, and one person was killed and 3 or 4 more were injured on yesterday, was it? Yeah, yesterday. And the news report said the final day of the Passover. The final day of the Passover. And it's interesting that these people still meet to celebrate the Passover, and it's an important part of their religious ceremonies and their religious activities. But these two had gone to the Passover at Jerusalem, and they came away probably totally rejected and totally downcast. They went there with all kinds of expectations. Maybe this would be the time when the kingdom would be set up. Maybe Christ would set up his kingdom, and this would be a great celebration, different than any others. But things didn't go as they had expected. They saw what had happened to the Messiah. They knew that not only did he die on the cross, but he was taken and put in the tomb. And then they would have heard the rumors. Somehow or another, he's not in the tomb. He's not there. Could it be that he's risen from the dead? Could it be that there was a resurrection that has taken place? Well, questions. And they're making their way back home, and none of these questions have got answers. And if you could imagine them just walking along and talking to each other and kind of discussing these questions. And then a third person comes alongside. A third person comes along. But they didn't recognize it. They didn't stop and say, let's have a look at you now. It's just that person came along and walked along with them. But the important phrase, and I've got it there on the screen, and it applied not only to those people, but to many others back in Jerusalem. And we talked about it this morning, even with Mary. Jesus had to speak her name before she recognized him. But they did not see Jesus. And let me suggest to you that that could be a topic for a whole series of messages in all of our churches. Because today, we're in a day when people are failing to look to Jesus, and they're spending their lives, and they could say, but they did not see Jesus. Even people who come to church, and yet don't have quite that faith to believe. Well, in this atmosphere of doom and gloom, they're on their journey. And then we have in Luke 24 and 15, Jesus himself came up and walked along with them. Jesus came along and walked with them. Didn't recognize him, didn't know who he was, but still he was there, walking along. And I think, again, that's one of those beautiful pictures that we can look at and say, isn't that true of many people way outside the church? Many people who are going through the days of gloom and doom, many people who are going through trials and difficulties, and Jesus comes alongside and walks with them, and really they're not aware of the fact that he's there. But he understood. He understood their concerns. And probably we should notice there that his nature had really not changed. He'd gone to the cross, he'd been in the tomb, he was resurrected, but he was still the same Jesus. There's still the same one who wanted to come alongside people, who wanted to be there for people. We could be critical of them and say, well, why didn't they? Why didn't they recognize his voice? Why didn't they recognize, something about him? But it's easy for us to stop today and say, we're surrounded by people who find it easier to grumble about their situation than to praise the Lord. It's not always easy to praise the Lord, and sometimes we fall into the trap of saying, oh my, look at poor me. Look at what I'm going through. Look at the difficulty. You don't understand my situation. But let me tell you, Jesus understands it. That's what we need to know. We need to know that he understands, and even though we probably don't recognize him, he still comes alongside and walks with us. Then we move on. Verse 25 says, he talked with them. And what does he say? How foolish you are. They had heard what should have taken place. They had heard what was going to take place, but they really didn't understand it, despite the fact that it was probably taught to them, and they read it many times from Isaiah 53. They didn't grasp. The same as the disciples. Remember we said this morning, John and Peter, they were amazed because the tomb was empty. They had no idea that Jesus was the suffering servant. They thought only of that kingdom that he was going to set up. But it's interesting, too, that after they recognized him, and they were at home and they said, okay, this was it, this was Jesus. But look at what it says. Were not our hearts burning within us as he talked with us along the way? After they recognized and after they came to appreciate the fact that this was Jesus that walked and talked with them, then they began to look at it and say, yes, what he had to say to me was powerful stuff. I suspect that if you're going to be honest with yourself, I'm not even going to ask you to be honest with me, but with yourself, you would have to say tonight that there's been times in your life when God has come so very near and God has spoken to you and God has directed you and you could almost feel, his arms just embracing you. You could have probably said, My heart was strangely warmed. Well, the story of Calvary has been presented again this Easter. It's not a new story. But how many people? This congregation, other congregations right across the province, right across the country for that matter, they've heard that wonderful story of the crucifixion, the resurrection. And maybe the hearts have been strangely warmed. But the important thing is, have they been willing to do something about it? Have they been willing to say, yes, Lord, I'll follow you? Well, let me move on. Verse 28 tells us, Jesus continued on as if he were going further. And I put in brackets there, that's not part of the scripture verse. He responded to them. Here's what happened. They're walking along. They come. Now these two, they're going to go over to their house right over there. And Jesus doesn't say, okay, I'm going in with you guys. I'm going to stay with you. No, no. The Word tells us that he would have. He would have continued on. In other words, he was just planning and the guys have gone over there. Oh, well, wait, why don't you come over there? They're saying to him. Why don't you come over with us? Why don't you stay with us? Now that might not sound too earth-shattering, but it really shows us Jesus in one of his finest moments. Because that's what he always does. He never forces himself on anybody. He always gives every individual the freedom of choice. We always have the choice. He would have kept on going. But they said, hey, come back here. Come on in with us. Come in and stay with us tonight. And of course he comes. Now, if you went to St. Mark's Gospel, and we're not going to take the time to go to it, but you've got the story of the disciples. They're out in the boat, and the wind is contrary. The wind is against them. Things are going rather difficult for them. And they look out across and they see Jesus walking on the water. He's walking towards them. And the word is very clear, no question about it. Jesus is walking, they're there in the boat, and he continues to walk on by. And the word tells us that he would have gone past them. He would not have gone to the boat. He would not have looked at their situation. He would not have calmed the storm for them. But they called out. And that's the key all the time. No matter what the situation, when we call out to him, when the disciples called out, when those guys on the road called out to him, he came to them. He ministered to them, if you like. For those guys in the boat, he went over to the boat. The storm was calm. For those guys on the road, he went in, sat down. Well, it's time to have lunch. Let's have lunch together. But the important thing we have to realize is that he responded to them. And he will respond to everyone. Call on the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. You want to be saved? That's the answer, isn't it? That's the answer. Call on him. We don't have to say, well, maybe he's busy. Maybe he's in a committee meeting, or maybe he's gone somewhere or another. No, 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 no. All we need to do is call because he will respond immediately to the call. And you know, it doesn't matter whether we're in the fishing boat, or whether we're in the woods, or in your vehicle, or in church. It doesn't matter. All you have to do is to call out to him. Otherwise, he'll pass you by. He'll pass you by if you don't call him. One more point, number 4 there. Verse 30. He took the bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him. And in brackets I put in, he revealed himself to them. He revealed himself to them. The breaking, the sharing of the bread was the key for them. Remember this morning, for Mary, who was hearing her name. That's all. Hearing her name. For John, it was when he went in there and saw the clothes laid out there on the rock. Question is, how does he reveal himself to you? For me, I mentioned, I think it was last week, I mentioned the young people in the school, and they wrote a little thing about Easter. What's Easter all about? And they talked about the bunny rabbits, and they talked about, you know, the everything else except the Easter eggs and all that kind of stuff, except the true meaning. And somehow or other, through that, in the classroom there, because of their writings, God spoke to my heart. I remember many years ago now, we were attending the corps in there in what was Long Pond in those days, CPS corps. Now, father-in-law had been saved at one point in time, but had slipped away. And he came in, and he was with us for a few days, and on Sunday we went to church. And it was just I'll say an ordinary meeting. Nothing spectacular happening, but on a Sunday evening, one of the little girls, about 10 years old, got up from her seat and went up and knelt at the altar. He didn't have a clue who she was. Knew nothing about her. But the sight of that little girl spoke to his heart. Or God spoke to his heart because of that little girl. That was the little key, if you like. The father wanted to be saved, or at least I'm saying he wanted to be saved. I'm not sure. He attended church, but that didn't make it a profession of faith. And you'd say, one of those days. But when his daughter walked out on the stage to be commissioned as a Salvation Army officer, that was it. There was no holding him back. God used that situation. The lady, when she saw a particular preacher in the pulpit, looked up, and somehow or another, the preacher reminded her of her grandfather. God used that situation. I don't know how God speaks. That's one of the mysteries. You know, we don't have prescribed way. We don't need to look up in the directions of how God is going to speak. I've seen it happen many times. Sometimes it's happened after a message. Sometimes it's happened after a testimony. Sometimes it's happened after somebody singing. Sometimes it's happened with the opening song. But I do know that God continues to speak. He reveals himself to us. And because he reveals himself to us, we are willing to call out in that moment, he'll respond. And then we can walk and talk with him all along the journey. Know that he'll never leave us, he'll never forsake us, he'll always be there. But we need to reach out in faith. The question is, how will you respond? How will you respond? When God speaks to you, how will you respond? Now, I'm not asking how you responded in the past. Because really that doesn't make any difference. That's gone now. But how will you respond the next time God speaks to you? If that's tonight, if that's tomorrow morning, it might be 3 o'clock in the morning, I don't know. Are you willing to say, I'll respond to him, I'll reach out to him, I'll trust him? There's a chorus that says, there is a Redeemer. Jesus, God's own Son, precious Lamb of God, Messiah, Holy One. He is the only Redeemer. He is the only way to be at peace with God. He's the only one that we can trust, that we can depend upon. He's the resurrected Lord. Tonight, I don't know if God has been speaking. Maybe he'll speak to you during that chorus. What are you going to do? How will you respond to him? This place of prayer is available. And if you'd like to come and say, I want to make matters right with God, this opportunity is yours. Can't promise you any more. Can't promise you any other. Don't know anything about what the future holds. But if God speaks, if God is just nudging at your heart,